Season 2 of Food for Therapy. I'm your host, Therese Bolden. Welcome to my show, the show that combines my training and specialties of psychotherapy and counseling and writing with my love and my passion of food and hosting and culture. And on this very first episode of Season 2, I have a beautiful, beautiful light lunch that's going to support the topic today. And the lunch is some beautiful chicken burgers, which I made myself, of course. They have a combination of various Middle Eastern spices, so it's a dukkha spice. I've added to them also some paprika. I've added to them some pickled lemon. That's a side garnish. The salad also has my beautiful vegetables that I've roasted of eggplant and capsicum. Just the thing we need to support the topic today. And the topic is called Peace Through the Holy Instant. And I'm going to explain what all that is in just a moment. Our beautiful drink is my favorite strawberry sparkle, which has some fresh strawberries and some mint with some Pellegrino mineral water. So as I said, the topic is called the Holy Instant, and the Holy Instant is an experience that I had a number of years ago, probably about 24 years ago now. And I was actually guided in my meditation that I do daily, twice a day, to talk about that experience and how that experience can bring us to a place of peace. And by peace, I don't mean the peace of not warring against each other. That is ultimately what happens when you experience the Holy Instant, but it means the peace within, the peace of acknowledging that we are all connected, we are all part of a divine universal energy, and that when we hurt one another, we hurt ourselves. And so it's peace of mind, the peace of the universe, the peace of source, if you want to call it. And if you don't want to use the word God, you can use universe or source or God. But let me explain to you what the Holy Instant was for me. And I should preface it by saying that I do not subscribe to any religion. I do not practice any religion. I was raised in a Coptic Orthodox Christian home. I was raised with a lot of dogma and very indoctrinated. And in truth, I never had any answers to the questions that I always had. I was a voraciously curious child, and a lot of the questions that I had around a God or a universal order was never really answered to me in a way that made sense. The simple question of, if God created us out of love, why would he create one religion to be superior to the other? If we're all made out of love, why would God want to hurt us? Why would God want to send us to a hell? Why would this God be vengeful and spiteful? And I never ever got any answers, let alone any answers that made any sense to me. So fast forward to, I think I was about 21, and my mother had died 2 years before that, and I was suffering a deep, deep depression. And I started the process of psychoanalysis, and I had no idea what that would entail. I just knew that I needed help because I was grieving tremendously and was suffering what's known as pathological grief because I couldn't accept that she had died. And in the process of my analysis, I think I was probably in analysis for 3 years when I had the experience of the Holy Instant. So I had, gone into my therapist's office thinking that I'd have a few sessions and it would be all over and done with. And 3 or 4 years down the track, I was still there doing the same thing every day. I was probably seeing her by now, probably 3 or 4 times a week. And what I found was that the intuition that I had as a young girl, that sweet, strong but silent voice that was deep inside me, had started to resurface through my psychoanalysis. And I started to trust it again. And I started to trust it tremendously. And I started to cultivate it. Now, through that experience, my analyst suggested that I start trying meditating because I was incredibly anxious and incredibly sad. I developed agoraphobia and I couldn't leave the house. So I did. I started to meditate, and what I found was that I would come away from the meditation feeling like I had just taken drugs, which was a remarkable thing, because there was only ever one time that I tried some marijuana in my life, and I think I was 19 when I did that. And that was a horrible, harrowing experience where I started to hallucinate and see the house burning down, and it was incredibly frightening experience for me. And so I vowed from that experience that I would never, ever, I was not curious about drugs and would never try them. But what I found from the meditation was that I was able to get into a space and a place of meditation where I was deeply meditating into another state of consciousness. And I would come away from it feeling like I was ebullient, light, joyous, happy. Nothing bothered me. And this made me curious. So I started researching what it was that was happening to me in these states of meditation. I started learning about different types of meditation and how to really get into really deep states of meditating where I just was I was so peaceful. I can't even articulate how peaceful it was. And I wanted everybody to have the same experience that I did. I wanted everybody to feel the joy that I did through meditation. I wanted everybody to be as free as I was through meditation and through psychoanalysis, because these things were happening in parallel. Lo and behold, one time I was out with a friend and I happened to be in New York, and he gave me a copy of a book called Conversations with God. And this started to answer a lot of the questions that I had early on in my life about religion and about the fact that regardless of what religion there is, we are all one. And I mean, if you are somebody that subscribes to the Christian religion, you'll know that in the Bible it does say that we are all one, that when you hurt your brother, you hurt yourself. And I really started to understand the esoteric message of it. And I came to understand that, wow, this is what it really means. It means that we're not, who we are is not the body of what Therese presents to you. Who I am is not my body. Who I am is my essence, my energy, or my source. And that is connected to everybody else. So, it's so yummy. Fast forward a year or so later, my husband at the time and I had two young children. I think my daughter was probably 18 months old and my son was 3.5, close to 4. And bear in mind, I had been cultivating this process of meditation twice a day, early in the morning and in the evening before I slept, and was able to get into a very, very deep state of meditating. I decided to take my mala beads or my prayer beads with me. We were traveling from Sydney to Melbourne. I think I was coming to my brother's engagement. And I was in the car and and my children are in the back seat doing their thing, and my husband at the time is obviously driving. And I decided to meditate, and I was probably in the meditation for about 8 to 10 minutes. It was no longer than that. And I opened my eyes, and what I discovered was a deeply, profoundly joyous state of knowing without a shadow of a doubt, there was absolutely no doubt, that I was one with everything else in the world and in the universe. And not only that I was one, but that I had no fear, that there was no past and there was no future, and I was in the eternal present. It was the most, the word ebullient isn't even enough to describe the joy that I felt in that moment. And it was literally an instant. which is why it's called the Holy Instant, that I had this experience. Now, the experience, it marked me in such a way that it would inform and it would take me on a totally new trajectory in my life. I had always been an incredibly curious and incredibly spiritual person. But because of all the teachings that had been given to me that I was now shedding through psychoanalysis, shedding through the breakdown, which was a breakthrough, and shedding also in meditation. But I had no idea of the name of what I had experienced. I didn't know what it was called. I just knew that I had this experience of being at one with everything. There was no troubles. There was no problems. There was the eternal moment, the eternal present. And that's the experience I had. So I want to give you a definition as to, fast forward. I want to actually fast forward. Fast forward 24 years, a few months ago, I was directed to open the book, A Course in Miracles. It's, anyone who's read The Course in Miracles knows it's an incredibly dense book, and over 1,000 pages, and it's not only teachings and learnings and lessons, but it's also coming to terms and understanding what the Holy Instant was. So I was directed to read it, and I found that what I had experienced was the Holy Instant. And I want to give you the definition of what the Course in Miracles defines as the Holy Instant. So the Course in Miracles defines it as, there is no change in heaven because there is no change in God. In the Holy Instant in which you see yourself as bright with freedom, you will remember God. For remembering him is to remember freedom. In exchange for the Holy Instant, he stands ready to give you an remembrance of eternity. So I truly, truly understood that what I had experienced was absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, the Holy Instant. Then I was directed to the Circle of Atonement, which gives this definition. The Holy Instant is a moment in which we temporarily set aside the past and enter into a timeless present, in which we momentarily transcend identifications with illusions and recognize what is real. This was the experience that I had, and I understood it because I'd experienced it, but I understood it. It was me. It was the core of who I was. And I started to get back into the process of meditating daily. I started to meditate in the morning again. I started to meditate twice a day. Sometimes I would meditate for an hour and a half. Sometimes I would meditate for half an hour. Whatever I needed to do, or wherever I was directed, is where I would meditate. What I started to recognize also too was that the veil between this life and the spirit world, I felt, was almost not transparent, but transparent in which my soul could recognize it. So when I was meditating, I was able to receive messages, and that's how I was directed to do this episode today. In the meditation, I would ask my spirit guides, I would ask the source to come through and give me some kind of direction or idea as to what I should talk about in this episode. And they kept giving me the same message, which was the message of peace. Now, peace, as I defined in the beginning of the episode, is not the peace the way that the world understands it. The peace is through the Holy Instant, because when you have experienced the Holy Instant, as I did, as I'm sure others have, there's no way to see the world in with the eyes of illusion, which is that you see yourself as being separate from somebody else. And I know that this can be quite abstract to understand, and I guess it is abstract in a sense, but I know that once you've actually experienced it in the way that I have and in the way that many others have, you won't see it as abstract. You'll actually see it as something very, very simple, and something that happens when you're ready. And, I ask myself, why did I have that experience? Because I didn't even know what it was called when I had the experience. And I believe that I had it because, one, I was in a deep meditative state in which there was a tremendous amount of gratitude and appreciation and humility. I was in the state of wanting more. And that's what the Course in Miracles defines as that's all you need to do in order to have the experience. You just need to be humble of heart. You just want to choose that you experience love. I didn't ask to experience it. I do not believe that I'm special because I experienced it, but I fundamentally believe that I am blessed for having experienced it. And I'm blessed because when I look around me in the state of the world, the abject state of misery, the polarities that exist in this world, we cannot continue down the same trajectory and expect to get a different result. And I think it was Einstein that said that you cannot continue to do the same thing and get a different result. How many wars do we have to have when we learn? We continue to have these wars because humanity has not learned. We have not learned that when we hurt our brothers or when we hurt our neighbors or when we hurt somebody else, that we're actually hurting ourselves. We have not learned how to love. We have not learned that the essence of who we are is our oneness and our love. And until we have actually learned this, learned what peace actually means, we will not evolve and we will not change. And again, I say to you, I have asked time and time again when I've meditated that I wanted a clear and defining message as to what I should talk about in this first episode. Of course, the episode, the format of my series is usually that I would have a guest on here and we would chat. But I was asked to do this episode specifically by myself because of my experience of having experienced the holy instant. Now, I want to give you some examples of where you know that we are one. And one of the most definitive examples of where you know that we are one energy is when you are thinking of somebody and you'll get a random phone call from them, or you will randomly bump into them in the street, or another example might be that when you're walking in the street and an animal comes up to you. My husband and I were chatting about this recently. How does the animal know to look into your eyes? It does, we define these things that we see with as eyes, but how does an animal know to look into them? It's because we're all energy and they're sensing our energy. When you're a group of women and you're around each other, how is it that we become in sync with our menstrual cycles? Again, it's all energy and we're all one. These are the most simplest examples that I can give to you to demonstrate that if you can look past someone as a body and define that is who they are, you'll actually start to drop what's called the illusion. The Course in Miracles defines us as having two emotions. One is love and one is fear. And fear is the way the world is constructed. It's constructed in polarities and it's constructed in hierarchies. It's constructed in victims and aggressors. And then there's love, which is the source of who we are, which is how I experienced myself when I had the experience of the holy instant. It was pure love. And I mean, the greatest joy aside from this that I've ever had is the joy of giving birth to my children. And this was even more profound than that because it was the pure and essential essence of what we're made of. And I tell you that having come from a background where I was raised with these very rigid constructs of what God is, what God's meant to be. And again, I say to you, it never made any sense to me. How could a loving God that loves us and creates us in his or her image, and by his or her, again, I mean man, woman, he, she, however you choose to define yourself, the ocean, the trees, the birds, nature, animals. This is what I mean by created in his image. That's how I understand it to be. How could a God that loves us and has created all want to hurt us? How could a loving God that has created us want us to send us to eternal damnation and fire? And none of those teachings made any sense to me at all. And so what I found in the experience was that when I let go of religion, I found a fundamental faith. And that faith is in a universal order. Call it God, call it source, call it a higher being, an order that is omnipresent in everything that exists. And that is where I found a faith. And that is what brings me the most peace and the most joy. That is what has informed me since having that experience. And, you know, I spoke about the experience to a number of people, friends, people I'd come in contact with, people who would ask me how I got to a state of deep meditation, how I came to experience that state. I spoke about the experience, but I never really had a term to actually define it and define what it means. And to have a definition for it was even more freeing. To know that other people have experienced the same thing I have and have moved with peace through having the holy instant is such a unifying force. It's such a unifying experience. It's so humbling. And it means that you see the world in a totally different way, because you no longer see it as, you no longer see anyone in the context of them as a person, a physical being. You see beyond that. And that's what's called the illusion, is that we have been trained and taught to believe that we are a body, you know. But beyond that, there is something profound and beautiful and all-encompassing beyond that. And that is the experience I had with the Holy Instant. Now, as I've continued on to read, I'm a voracious reader and I read a lot. I read a lot of books. I read a lot of science books. I read a lot of biographies. And I read, you know, anything that interests me, because sometimes I feel that life can be more marvelous and more spectacular than any fiction you could ever create. Life is more amazing than that, and that's probably why I'm drawn to reading biographies, and you know, what I was finding in my research on reading about science was that even the most profound and prolific scientists, you know, Nikola Tesla and Einstein, who didn't subscribe to any religion and believed that we were connected to one and an energy that was one in all things, you know, and that humbled me even more. These evidence-based, you know, physicists who see the world through the eyes of empirical evidence really understood fundamentally that we were all energy and all energy is connected, all of it. And that was even more humbling for me. And, you know, made me do more research on it, made me want to look at different examples and see what else there was. Because, as I said, I'm an incredibly curious person. And, you know, someone that wants to know more than what I see. It's not enough for me to think that this life is all there is, and it never has been. And I guess because of my curiosity, because of my wanting answers, because of my research, because of my studying psychotherapy, studying the psyche, having psychoanalysis, having, you know, experience of metaphysical or spiritual, however you want to call it, it's made me even more curious. And it made me realize that the more I learn, the less I know. And that makes me even more voracious in my curiosity. But I want to go back to just talking about the way that we see the world in the moment in terms of polarities. And I want to talk about it in the context of fear and love. And I want to go back to the Course in Miracles, because as I've continued to read through the Course in Miracles, what I've come to understand is that it is, most people are afraid. Most people are afraid, and fear is what guides and directs people. And if we use the wars in the world at the moment as an example of, you know, one country is afraid that they might be eviscerated or annihilated off the face of the planet, and so they leap into warring with another country. One country's fighting with another. Again, we have the aggressor and we have the victim. It's all polarities. It's all about fear. But the way that we can move through it, the way in which humanity can move through that, I believe, is through forgiveness. And forgiveness, as defined by, as I've continued to read in the Course in Miracles, is that once we can forgive an aggressor who has aggrieved us, we forgive ourselves. And in forgiving ourselves, this reconnects us with each other. We recognize that we cannot continue to hurt each other without hurting ourselves. We just can't keep doing it. And in forgiveness, this is what the Course in Miracles describes as the way to atonement and the way through to salvation. And I'll use my own self in terms of, recently I had some experiences with, some people, one family member and another, who's close to, enough to me. And I felt incredibly aggrieved in the past couple of years from these people. But I got to a place where I realized that I didn't want to feel that way anymore. I wanted to let it go, and I was ready to forgive them. And in forgiving them, I forgave myself. And I'm not telling you that you need to forgive anybody. I'm not telling you anything other than what my experience is. I found a way to move through it because I forgave them. I found a way to open up through the forgiveness. It opened my heart up to receive. It opened my heart up to love. It opened my heart up to be more all-encompassing. It opened my heart up to let go of more of the illusions that were in front of me. It's easy for us to get in that mode of I am me and I am separate. I am me and that's all there is. And that's the way most of humanity operates. But it's not working. It's just not working anymore. And I do feel that there are no accidents. I do feel that there are what some people would call coincidences, but I say that they were divinely designed, because I don't tend to look at things through the lens of polarities. I just see them as occurrences, like the wars that are happening at the moment, so that it can help humanity to evolve. Because if we recognize that we are the same, if we recognize that the essence of who we are is connected, then we're going to think about that in a very different way. The lens with which we look at people will be a very different outcome. Because again, we cannot continue to do the same thing and expect a different result. So, all I can do is continue to ask for guidance, continue to speak my experiences, continue to ask for more signs, because I'm acutely aware and I'm incredibly intuitive, incredibly metaphysical, incredibly curious, to continue to ask for signs as to the course and the path that I should take. And I will continue to listen and continue to be guided, because I think that when we ask for those signs, they're given to us. And signs are given to us in various different ways. Sometimes they can be a literal sign. Sometimes they can be your intuition, which is a strong and silent voice, or sometimes it can be like a sledgehammer. Sometimes it can be spoken from the mouth of a babe, like literally. Sometimes they come in so many different guises, but when we ask for them humbly and open to receiving without putting our own construct or our own expectations about what we expect to receive, we'll get the sign. We'll get the sign in which direction we need to continue on. We'll get the signs as to what we should be doing. Intuition is like a muscle. It needs to be cultivated in order to continue to grow. So this is really where I'm at with my embracing metaphysics and or spirituality, if you'd like to call it. And I want to continue to evolve. I want to continue to grow as a spirit. I want to continue to learn more, because that's why I'm here in a body. You know, this body has given me so much to learn with, you know, to learn from. There's so much that I can identify through my body, and this is why I'm here, you know. So there's lots to ponder on, and there's lots to question if you want answers to your questions. There are some people that just want to walk through life and be in their body and are content with that. I am not one of those people. I never have been, and I don't ever believe that I will be until my last breath. So I continue to ask the questions. And on that note, I'm going to take a quick break. Please come back and chat with me some more, or listen in to the next episode of Food for Therapy, where we talk about peace through the holy instant. Come back and join me.